Welcome back to Second Chance, the podcast about recovery, resilience, and rebuilding. I'm your host, Sturdy, and as always, I'm joined by the incredibly strong Ada.
Hi, Sturdy. It's great to be here. And, well, this is a big day for me. As of this morning, it's officially been 1 full year. 365 days clean.
Ada, that is absolutely phenomenal. A whole year. The first year is often the hardest mountain to climb. How does it feel?
It feels surreal, honestly. There were so many days in the beginning where I didn't think I'd make it a week, let alone a year. It feels like I finally started to breathe again.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And in honor of your incredible milestone, I thought today we could focus on exactly that. Not the darkness of addiction, but the practical, day-to-day strategies for staying on the path of recovery. What does it take to build a life where you don't just survive, but you thrive?
I love that because it really is a daily choice. So, where should we start?
Let's start at the beginning of your journey. Take us back to those first few weeks, those first couple of months. What was the biggest challenge you faced right after you got clean?
Oh, wow. The emptiness. Everything felt gray. My body was healing, which was physically exhausting, but my mind was just a void. All the routines, the people, the entire structure of my day had revolved around using. When that was gone, I felt completely lost. I'd just sit and stare at a wall, not knowing what to do with myself for hours.
That's such a common and disorienting experience. What you were likely dealing with, aside from the acute withdrawal, is something called Post-Acute Withdrawal Syndrome, or PAWS.
It stands for Post-Acute Withdrawal Syndrome. Think of it this way. The initial withdrawal, the part everyone knows about with the shaking and the sickness, that's the acute phase. It's your body screaming for a substance it's become physically dependent on. But your brain is a much more complex organ. For a long time, it stopped producing its own pleasure and reward chemicals, like dopamine, because it was getting a massive artificial supply from the outside. When that supply is cut off, the body's factory has to restart, but the machinery is rusty. Pause is the long, slow process of your brain chemistry returning to normal. It can last for months, sometimes up to 2 years. The symptoms are not physically dramatic, but can be more emotionally and psychologically grueling. Intense mood swings, anxiety, chronic fatigue, memory problems, and that deep, pervasive sense of emptiness you described. It's the gray fog.
That makes so much sense. Just hearing it described like that, as a biological process and not a personal failure, is a huge weight off my shoulders. I thought I was just broken, that the joy was gone forever. The gray fog is exactly it. So, if pause is the enemy, what's the battle plan? How do you fight a ghost in your own head?
Excellent question. You don't fight it head on. That's like trying to punch the fog. You can't win. Instead, you build lighthouses. You create structures and habits that guide you through it, that give you a point of reference when you can't see the horizon. The first and critical lighthouse is structure. Your old life had a structure, even if it was a destructive one. It had rituals, goals, a daily rhythm. Recovery requires building a new one from scratch. In the beginning, this has to be incredibly simple. Don't think about what's my new passion. Think about what am I going to do in the next 15 minutes. It could be as simple as make the bed, take a shower, put on clean clothes, eat a real breakfast. The goal isn't to be productive, it's to be deliberate. It's about taking back control, one tiny intentional act at a time. In my first month, my therapist gave me a checklist. It felt silly at first. 3 p.m., brush teeth. 4 p.m., walk around the block. It worked. It was like my brain was too tired to make big decisions, but it could handle a checklist. It gave me those little wins. It proved I could still do things. I remember crying one day because I'd checked off all 5 things on my list. It was the first time I'd felt proud of myself in years.
And those little wins are the foundation of everything. That pride is the first glimmer of light. It proves that you are not your addiction. You are a person who can set a goal and achieve it. It's monumental. This brings us to the second lighthouse, which is just as critical: connection. Addiction is a disease of isolation. It convinces you that you are utterly alone in your struggle. Recovery is a process of rejoining the human race.
That was the hardest part. For so long, my connections were all around using. When I got clean, I had to cut almost everyone out of my life. It was a deafening silence. The idea of walking into a support group, a room full of strangers, and talking about the ugliest parts of myself, it was terrifying. I circled the block in my car for 20 minutes before my first meeting. I felt like I was wearing a sign that just said failure.
And yet, you walked in. That's the definition of courage, Etta. Not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. That feeling of being a failure is the addiction's last line of defense. It wants you to keep you isolated. But what you discovered when you walked into that room, what everyone discovers, is that you haven't found a room full of failures, you found a room full of warriors. Every single person in there is fighting the same battle. And the moment you speak your truth, that failure sign you imagine you're wearing is replaced by one that says belonging.
Exactly. It's the most incredible feeling, isn't it? The first time you share something you're deeply ashamed of, and the person across from you doesn't flinch. They just nod. They say, "Me too." In that moment, the shame loses its power. It can't survive in the light of shared experience. That connection is what starts to rewire the brain for healthy attachment, for trust. It's the antidote to the isolation of addiction.
That's the magic bullet right there. The 2 most powerful words in recovery. Me too. Because they dismantle the shame. Now, let's talk about the third lighthouse, one that people often underestimate. Getting out of your head and into your body. For so long, the body was just a vehicle for the addiction. It was something to be ignored, punished, or used. Reconnecting with your physical self through movement is one of the most direct ways to combat the anxiety and disassociation of PAWS.
Oh, definitely. For a long time, I treated my body like an enemy. It was just this thing that betrayed me with cravings. The idea of listening to my body was terrifying. But my sponsor suggested I just start by walking. No goal, no distance. Just walk and pay attention to my feet on the pavement. It was so simple, but it was revolutionary. It got me out of the frantic hamster wheel of my thoughts and into the present moment. It reminded me I had a body that could do things other than feel pain or desire.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's not about running a marathon the first week. It's about reminding your brain that it has a body, and that body can be a source of comfort, not just pain. The simple, repetitive motion of walking, the rhythm of your feet, the fresh air, it's all data for a healing brain. It's a form of mindfulness in itself. You are grounding yourself in the physical reality of the present, which makes it harder for the ghosts of the past or the fears of the future to take over. You're teaching your nervous system how to find a state of calm without a chemical. That's a superpower.
That concept of grounding yourself is so powerful. And for me, it grew into something I never expected. My sponsor is part of a sober hiking group. At first, I was like, no way. That's for healthy people. But she dragged me along one Saturday. And being out in the woods, hearing nothing but the birds and our feet on the trail, talking with other people who just get it, it was like a new kind of church. It combined the movement with the connection you talked about. It became this holistic thing. It's not just about not using anymore, it's about actively building this new, healthier, happier life.
That's a perfect illustration of how these strategies weave together. You're not just treating one symptom, you're building an entirely new operating system for your life. You've combined movement, connection, and even a form of mindfulness by being present in nature. This brings us to the final lighthouse I want to discuss today, and it's perhaps the most abstract but also the most powerful: patience and self-grace. The road to recovery is never a straight line. There will be days where the fog rolls back in for no reason at all. How do you handle those moments now?
That's the hardest part. The first time I had a really bad day, maybe 6 months in, I panicked. I thought, it's back. All that work was for nothing. My immediate instinct was to hate myself, to see it as a failure. But I called my sponsor, and she didn't rush to fix it. She just said, okay, so you're having a bad day. It's just a day. It doesn't erase the 180 good ones you had before it. She reminded me that my brain is still healing. It's like a sprained ankle that occasionally twinges. You don't get mad at the ankle, you just give it a little rest. Learning to see a bad day as a twinge and not a relapse has been a game changer. Okay, thank you, Ada. It was good having you today. Happy recovery and keep coming back. See you guys in the next video.